and I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, and everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
Hello, and welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 51 Sports Network. As it's been a newsworthy day in the National Hockey League. Something the significant trade happened involving the Vancouver Canucks. So we'll start with that, and we'll get into a bunch of other things with mostly Flames focus. But we're going to start with the Bo Horvat trade. But first, we got to say hello to everybody. Hello, Sean. How are things in the cold land of Calgary?
It's not that cold anymore. We got through those 2 days of cold, of a little bit colder than what we've been used to since just around Christmas. But what happened today? Did I miss anything?
Nope.
Do the Canucks have a captain? Not anymore.
Not anymore.
They were jealous of the Flames not having one, so they had to get rid of theirs.
Yeah. A other voice you're hearing is Dan Stevenson from Fireside Chat. How are you, Dan?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, guys. This is part 2 of mine and Kevin's crossover episode, just like Sweeps Week on your favorite TV show where all the characters cross over.
Yes. So yeah, Dan and I recorded a episode of the Fireside Chat last night where there's going to be a little bit of an overlap in some of the things we talked about, and maybe we'll expand on some of the things that we talked about in there. So you can listen to that now. That's on the Fireside Chat feed. This podcast will also be on the Fireside Chat feed next week, as their Fireside Chat is taking a week off from podcasting. I've heard of
the judge said I'm not supposed to stalk the players in the week off in Mexico, so we got nothing to talk about. So we'll put this show on the Fireside Chat feed.
Yeah, so like the NHLPA, though, you're not going to get fined for it, though. This is not like the Toronto Maple Leafs getting fined for going a little too early. Like the podcast, the NHL Podcast Association isn't going to go, hey, this is wrong kind of thing.
No, Elias just doesn't like it when I'm looking at a telescope at him in the hot tub and trying to see what he's up to.
Dude, you don't have to go that far to see a flame guy on this week off. Markstrom's going to all the country concerts here.
I live just down the street from Wrenchman, so I can do the reporting very close to home. My accountant just said I can't write that off.
Oh, what kind of accountant is that?
Obviously, Bo Horvat accountant.
Smart one.
Yeah. We are going to have a run-in in typical Royal Rumble fashion. Devin is expected to join us here in a little bit. I think, what number will he be? Will he be the surprise number 30 entrant of the Royal Rumble?
69.
69. It's a 69 person Royal.
We can be like Mysterio this year, where we think one Mysterio is coming and we get the other.
The other Mysterio, yeah. And then yeah. Yeah.
Just don't turn your back and let him hit you with the chair like Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns.
Yeah, for sure. Keep the chairs away, keep the lights away, all that sort of stuff, and I think everything will be fine. But let's get into this. The Vancouver Canucks did it. It's in somewhat Not surprising move, maybe surprising in terms of the timing, but we can discuss that, I guess. But Bo Horvat is now a New York Islander. Fascinating as Lou Lamoriello traded the Bo Horvat pick to acquire Corey Schneider, and now Lou Lamoriello acquires Bo Horvat in a trade with the Vancouver Canucks. The Canucks have to retain 25% of Horvat's salary for Anthony Beauvillier. Atu Ratu, the number one prospect in the New York Islanders camp, and I'm not selling this just to make this look better, and a conditional first-round pick. If it is not in the top 12, it is a 2023 first-round pick. If it is in the top 12, it is an unprotected 2024 pick. So, here we go. We were discussing this was the trade that we would probably see something happen in terms of where the Canucks are going. Sean, are you satisfied with the direction that the Canucks took in this trade?
Yeah, I am. I think there was a lot of talk in terms of trying to parse words with what the Canucks were looking for. But this is your standard sort of rental package in the NHL. You have a first round pick, which is these days is always protected. So anyone that expected an unprotected pick, especially this draft, you're crazy. And then you're usually going to get a good prospect and then a roster player to make the cap work. And Atu Ratu was the 52nd overall in the 2021 draft, but he was very highly touted going into that draft year. He just fell off. There was times where people were touting him as a top 10 talent in that draft, but he fell off, but has had a bounce back. He played really well in his draft plus 1 year in Finland and has looked good in his first North American pro season this year, putting up 15.7 goals in 27 games with the Bridgeport Islanders, and then playing 12 games and scoring 2 goals with the New York Islanders, including his first ever NHL goal against the Canucks. So it's a fun little fact now. And then, Anthony Beauvillier. Hey, I said his name right because I butchered it a few times on this podcast.
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah. He's just he's 25 years old. I think he's probably got another level offensively in him. Especially if we play out from under the Barry Trotz, Lou Lamoriello tight system. I know they're trying to install a little bit of that with the Talkit, but I think it's going to be a little looser than that system. So I think we could see him be a bump up his offensive numbers with the Canucks this year. But to me, the very more interesting one is that first round pick, and because where the Islanders are at, they're 2 points out of the wild card spot right now. And even if they make it, they're going to be in a wild card spot, which means there's a good chance they're playing Boston. And if they're out, that's the Canucks are looking at. I think even as long as they're a wild card team, the Canucks are still picking between 13th and 17th with that pick in 2023. But if they miss the playoffs and they have a top 12 pick, it rolls over to 2024. And when you look at this Islanders roster, it's old. And could that be a pick that could turn into what the Flames had to deal with the Hominick trade, where the Islanders got Dobson with a high pick and had to go through the lottery craziness there. Florida might be doing that this year. And then you had San Jose and Ottawa and Colorado all within dealing with that in the past as well, where they traded away or received protected picks that turned into unprotected first round picks in the year after. Where was it the Carlson trade where Ottawa ended up with 2 top 5 picks in a draft. Colorado got Bowen Byram out of that. So that's the interesting one for me, is what happens with that first round pick, because this is a deeper draft than what we're used to, according to a lot of the experts. So there could be someone there that could be who would be potentially a top 10 talent in any other draft. So that's if they get a 13th, 14th overall, which would be very good for the Canucks. But if they end up with a 2024 draft pick and it's higher, wow.
Yeah, the island. I wonder. I just from the Islanders' perspective, I was listening briefly to an Islanders podcast, and they hate this trade with a passion. It's they don't think Bo's going to sign, and they think they gave up. They absolutely did not want to give up Ratu, and absolutely did not want to give up a first round pick. So from the Islanders' perspective, they're not happy about this trade. So that's probably a good sign for the Canucks. And I just wonder where the Islanders are. You're right. I think 2024, I agree. This is a very interesting situation. And I wonder if the Islanders are going to try to pull the Columbus of a 2018-19 and try to throw all of their chips in to see if they can get a run out of this, even though they're in a wild card spot.
Oh, I thought you meant they were going to try and snipe somebody from Calgary last minute.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Phillips is the next shortest guy, so they can sign him to $10 million over in the island.
Yeah. Yeah. Dan, what are your thoughts?
It's not where I expected Horvat to end up. I think that, when you're looking at teams, and this very much reminds me, the Islanders of sort of where the Flames are right now, sort of that fringe playoff team. And I think that they're putting a lot in to try and win this year. And we talked about this last night on Fireside Chat. Should the Flames do the same? I expected Horvat to either go as a rental somewhere, that was to a team that was much higher in the standings, or sort of a trade and sign, like trade and they'd already have a long-term deal done. I don't see him staying on the island. And I think that the Islanders are mortgaging a lot and they're not going to get much out of it. This sort of reminds me of the Flames deal for Yarncroke last year. Like the Flames gave up a lot for a guy that really didn't move the needle. And I'm not saying Yarncroke and Horvat are comparable, but I just think he's not going to move the needle a lot in Long Island.
Not enough, because I think there's a lot more things that they need as well.
I agree. And, when I first saw it, it was weird to me. I'm like, why had top 12 protected? But, Sean, you're right. When I dug into it, it's because that's probably where they're going to be in the standings. Usually we see top 10 protected. I don't think we've ever seen a 12 before.
Yeah. Go
now,
ahead.
the only thing, I guess it becomes to, I also don't know that Vancouver got enough here. Like when I was looking at Vancouver's return, I thought to myself, really, that's it? I was kind of expecting either more picks or a bigger name roster player.
Well, I guess the question would be, would you have, and I think that there's two sides to this argument, and I'm really, to be honest with you, not sure where I sit, which is good podcasting skill, but I'll be honest. I don't know where I sit. Do you allow the team to negotiate an extension? Or do you just go, okay, you deal with Bo Horvat. Thank you very much.
I think you could get more if you allow them to negotiate an extension. So I would.
What if Bo said no thanks you to the Islanders?
I'm sure there's somebody out there that would take him that would want to extend him. Or if not, I mean, the deadline's coming. If it was me, I'd probably, and maybe this is why I'm not an NHL GM except on my Xbox. I would probably let him shop around, see who he wants to sign an extension for. If nobody, then swing back around and say, okay, now we're looking at a rental market. What would you give us for a rental?
I just look at that and what's the standard sort of rental price for a top end player? A first, a prospect,
That's
and a
true.
younger
Yeah,
roster
and you
player.
really kind of got 3 firsts in this, if you will.
I mean, that's what Alvin said.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because this now sets the market price for this year. We're always waiting for that first domino to drop.
Yeah, I think I think there's always this like hope that your GM can swindle someone else in these deals, but there's two parties at play, and especially if you're dealing with Lou, like, I look at that deal and it's on par. It's on par for what top, like, sort of top 6 players get, other than like pure bona fide superstars. Essentially, a top 6 forward, especially a center, is going to get a first, a prospect,
I guess
and a roster player.
I guess maybe when I said I was expecting a little bit more, I was kind of expecting there would be a conditional pick if he signed. Something like, okay, if he signs here, then you get a second, or we've seen those kind of things done at the draft before. And I think maybe the fact that didn't happen tells you they're not expecting that signing.
Yeah. And I think part of that is also has to do with that first round pick. I think the fact that if Bo Horvat doesn't re-sign with the Islanders, say the Islanders miss the playoffs, they have like the 11th or 12th overall pick, so they keep it. And then Bo's like, screw this, I'm not staying here. I'm going to go to another team that I think is better set up here. Islanders aren't in any better position. They could end up with the Canucks could end up with a better pick.
It's true. And this is the kind of deal I look at and go, was that the best offer that was available, or was that like the only team they talked to? Like, it just, I don't know. It seems like there's other teams that might have offered more.
Well, maybe, but it all comes down to how you evaluate the players, like the Ratus and the Beauvilliers there, because I know that the Ratu is like, he's a player who,
and I think Ratu's going to end up being the key piece of this.
Yeah,
I think that's fair. Like, him or that first round pick, depending on what happens with it, are going to be the key piece, if not both at the same time.
Isn't there 31 other teams that, that are a part of this?
Hello.
Well, no, Chicago's
what number of the Royal Rumble did you just run in? You run in.
It took him a while to do his entrance.
I got one beer here. I don't have any other beers, so I can't be stone cold. I can try my best, but
that's okay.
I need some glass breaking.
Let's call you lukewarm.
Lukewarm,
which is totally okay.
Yeah.
Because my takes are very lukewarm.
There you go.
Well, hello, Devin. For those who are listening, who have no idea who this guy just jumped in on the StreamYard here, and how are you?
Listen, it's a big day in hockey, especially for our podcast, and I don't know what to think of this trade. I really have no idea what to think, and because I jumped in and I heard Dan talk about how was this the only offer that they had, or was this the best offer that they had? Is this the time that they should do it? I don't know.
Well, I think that's a fair sort of thought there, and at first glance, it does feel a little sort of underwhelming.
And I think as a non-Canucks fan, I'm maybe looking at it from a more distance approach.
But I'm not sure what else. I think Boston was apparently interested. Seattle was, but I never thought they had what the Canucks were looking for. Carolina was, but I think the Canucks, with Boston and Carolina, the Canucks were eyeing players that were on the roster there on both those teams that both those teams didn't want to give up, and which made it a little tougher to make those deals. So,
Well,
Being
and
Canucks fans, you guys tell me, but it just feels weird that they got 2 forwards. Like, it feels like the thing the Canucks need is a defenseman.
Well, that could be that's what that first round pick could turn
Well,
into.
Let me answer that question. Was my theory because I thought about this. It would have been Noah Dobson, but you're not getting a first if you're getting Noah Dobson. There's just no way that's happening.
I'd rather take Noah Dobson.
Yeah, I agree.
I would too, but I actually don't think I don't think he was even on the table.
He
I
probably
don't think
wasn't.
he was. No.
How about Travis Hamonic? Hey, Flames fans, would we like Noah Dobson?
Do we have to move the first round picks back to compensate
Yeah,
for
we
that?
have to do a time reversal here.
The control Z on that trade?
Yeah, but I also the other thing that I think is important here. I wonder how much they wanted to just get this jump on because they got a lot more work to do. You've got the Brock Besser situation. You've got Connor Garland. You may be trading Thatcher Demko. That may be on the table by the trade deadline, which is a bit of a head. I'm not going to lie, it's a head scratcher to me, but okay, we'll see what happens.
Maybe if they get the right offer. I think they're just again. I think they're doing due diligence on that one.
And
That's
Kevin, I
probably-
think you might be honest on there. I think by establishing the market price early, they're also establishing their own roster prices.
But that seems more like a off-season trade than a trade deadline, right?
Yeah.
Demko,
what,
yeah.
what
Demko, yeah, but not
goalie who would be a 1A within this league, if not a number 1, be traded at the trade deadline? I don't think that's ever been done, has it?
Ryan Miller.
Fleury
he's
last
he's
year.
not an A. Oh man,
Marc-Andre Fleury last year.
Yeah, but like we're talking about Demko, who's in his mid-20s, not comparison to guys who were previously number 1s and are now.
We're talking Ryan Miller back in the day when he got traded from Buffalo to St. Louis.
How old was he? Is my point. Right?
Mid-20. He was mid to late 20s. He wasn't that
think-
old.
I think he was okay. If we're talking about late 20s, he's probably 29.
I think
Maybe.
Anthony Niemi, when he was on top of his game, got traded at the deadline one year. What was it, to Dallas, I think?
That was post Cup though, was it not?
Yeah, but still on top of his game. I mean, let's be honest. Demko's
Fair.
post Cup too. He's not going to the Cup anytime soon in Vancouver.
Demko's post Cup.
Well, either he's pre Cup, but he's won a cup at some point in his life. He won the midget cup somewhere.
Yeah,
He won a coffee cup. Maybe he won a 1980.
I saw him leaving the
34
drive-through. His post Timmy's cup.
we're splitting membranes. Is that it, or are we splitting elephants? One of the two. I don't know.
He was 34 when he was traded to St. Louis.
Who? Niemi?
Ryan Miller.
Miller. Yeah, 34. But my whole point is that Demko is what, 24, 25?
27.
And it feels like he's younger. But yeah, I don't know. And you guys can prove me wrong. Instead of just grasping at straws, if we could, I'm talking about this, how I know, like I know fucking something, but I don't. It feels like this would be a one-off if that's the case. I don't think that Demko.
I don't think Demko gets moved to the deadline. I think Besser does, though, and I think this helps
sure.
establish the market price for Besser.
I think the two other trades that are happening are a trade of a winger, most likely Besser, and Luke Shen.
The AHL defenseman right now, Luke Shen, who could
Maybe he'll go
potentially
back
come
to
to Calgary.
Toronto.
Oh, come to Calgary for fuck's sakes. That'd be great.
You know, Treliving likes to go out and get his depth defenseman at the deadline.
Yes.
He's better than Mike Stone right now.
The other Stone.
The brothers. It drives. Yeah, I don't know,
It's
Dan,
on the
if you
Shifts
know
and
this.
Pucks podcast unless Devin runs in and then mixes the names of Mike and Mark Stone.
You get the Stone, the Strome brothers. You have the Stahl brothers, the Quinn, Jack Hugh brothers. I don't know. Like there's a lot of brothers in this league.
Maybe we just need to start doing like China and a one child per family policy just for Devin. You're going to play hockey, one child per family.
Please. Let's make this easy on me. The one thing I really want to stress on though is flip on the other side of things as far as this Horvat trade goes, how does yes, you for the Islanders, you improve your top 6, but do you really improve your chances of making the playoffs? Nothing.
Devin, what I'm saying is I wonder if they're going to try to do what Columbus did a few years ago and just go all in and make some wacky trades.
But what do you have? What capital do you have within that organization? I'm sorry.
I think Lou has dirt on other general managers. That's what I think Lou has.
You know what?
And I'm honestly joking when I'm saying this. Maybe he's part of some sort of like Lou's a crafty guy. Lou may know some information here because he keeps things all kind of quiet and comes in for the kill. But I think Lou's in it. I think the Islanders are in a very desperate situation.
You guys think that Lamoriello looks like a crypt keeper?
Yes.
Yeah, he could.
Lou looks happy with the trade today, doesn't he?
You have 9. You have 10 players on your team right now that are over 30.
Yeah.
10 players, and granted, if we're going down the road of potentially bringing Horvat back, you have $16 million. You only have Varlamov and Scott Mayfield as your UFAs, which does bode well as far as Lou Lamoriello goes for bringing back Bo Horvat. But I don't see Horvat signing back there. So I'm very skeptical in this trade of if you are an Islanders fan. I don't know if I'd be happy with it because there's no certainty within this.
No.
And
you're right. They don't have a lot of assets for rental. I mean, there's guys I wouldn't mind from that team, but I'm not paying a king's ransom for them.
What, Zach Parise? Is he?
I think there's value in Josh Bailey if you could get part of his salary retained. I think there's some value in Cizikas. He's got a long-term 2.5. I think Ryan Pulock, but they're not moving him.
No,
nobody wants Adam Pelech. Scott Mayfield, I think, might have some value, but if they're trying to add, they're not going to get rid of those pieces, right? If they're trying to go all in, they're not getting rid of anything.
And that's the whole thing is that even looking at they have every single round draft pick except for the first round that they just sold off to Vancouver. But what type of capital does that have within? Okay, your top 6 has a hole in it. I'm sorry. When you have, as far as daily faceoff goes, you have Josh Bailey, who's been on the 4th line, if not playing less than 15 minutes a night, with Bo Horvat and Matthew Barzal. I just don't see the logical sense behind
they would have to do what
Bo
the Flames
Horvat.
did last year and start selling all their picks. I mean, remember last year between Toffoli and the other guys they brought in, they pretty much sold all their top 3 picks in the next 5 years.
This smells to me like a desperation move from a GM who does not have a future. Or potentially doesn't, and is a win now.
And we don't know if Lou's on the hot seat there.
It feels like it with this trade.
It feels like it to me. Yeah. And they had a horrible offseason. Remember, they didn't get Kadri, they didn't get anybody. They ended up whatever happened at the draft table between Vancouver and the Islanders. We never know, but there was apparently there were reports that there was a trade on the table. They acquired Alexander Romanov, and I don't know if they come away with that feeling all that happy because they gave away a first round pick, if I am not mistaken, in that trade.
Yeah.
So
you have a good goaltender with a year left after this year at $4 million who will get paid the goddamn world. And you do have Lou Lamoriello at the helm there, so he'll probably nickel and dime him until the goddamn end. But outside of that, you have extensions that Pulock, Pelech just made, along with Barzal,
yeah,
which you had
nickel and
to
diming him. He's paying 1970s money, which is what he's used to.
Fair. My point is that you have a young goaltender, you have a good young defenseman in Noah Dobson, and you also have Matthew Barzal, and now you have Horvat, which is fantastic. But God, the amount of money that he's going to be spending within the next X amount of years, 3 years at minimum with Anders Lee, who is on the decline for another 3 years at $7 million. JG Pazio for another 3 years at $5 million, and Casey Zizekas at 2.5. All three of those players are good players, but not at that time, not that money.
Bo Horvat at 27 is the second youngest forward on that team,
which is unreal.
So I think we can all agree Bo's not going back.
I don't think so.
If I'm Bo Horvat,
I'm waiting to see how this. Yeah, there will be a lot of teams that want him. There'll be teams that maybe wanted him now, but didn't have the assets to make it work.
And I think to go back to Long Island, they're going to have to pay a premium to get him to endure that. I mean, that's not a team that's on the upward swing. I think that's a team that's on the downward swing.
And that is a horrible arena situation. That is a disaster of an arena situation. Like, it's a 2-hour commute to get to that rink in New York.
Yep.
And
let alone the fact that you have you're in your prime and you have a GM who really just holds his money close to his vest. The situation doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry.
All old people hold their money close to their vest. That's what they were used to back in the recession days. Don't give them a raise, give them a Werther's.
Yeah.
Boo Burns.
They're at UBS Arena now by Belmont.
Not a great location. It's not a great location.
It's better than like when they were out in
everything's better than the basketball rink, Sean.
And way better than the basketball rink in Brooklyn.
Well, like I know I came in a little bit late, but like the return also going the other way, I just don't feel is. I feel like they could have gotten more.
That's what I said. It felt a little light.
Yeah,
I felt that way a little bit too, but the structure matches what other players a similar ilk have gotten. It just comes down to what happens with that first round pick and what happens with Aatu Räty. Because I think that's the one. It's like Aatu Räty isn't your bona fide blue chip prospect. That's what normally you get in these deals that makes it feel enough. You knew they were going to get a first round pick. You knew they were going to get sort of a roster player that would just sort of make the cap work. And I think they got a better roster player than maybe they could have in Beauvillier. But it's the fact that Aatu Räty just doesn't scream blue chip prospect right now.
So let me ask you guys this as Canucks fans. Do you feel like the Canucks, because there's always teams that have to go into a rebuild but sort of don't want to admit it. Do you think the Canucks are admitting that they need that first round pick and it's rebuild time? Or do you think they might try to move that pick for a roster player and try to sort of retool on the fly?
No, they've admitted to major surgery.
Okay.
Yeah.
They've admitted.
And the other thing is that you're putting me in this umbrella as a Canucks fan there, Dan. You guys
talking Canucks fans.
Yeah, no. Listen, no.
Well, the only reason I could see, I'm just doing the research here into Horvat, that he might want to go back to Long Island so he could pull the Johnny Gaudreau. Well, it's close to home. It's on the same coast as where he's from, in Rodney, Ontario. I can't go home, but I can go close.
Yeah. I can't go anywhere near my actual home, but I'm close to home.
Closer.
I'm closer to home.
You're in the same time zone. Good on you, Bo.
Yeah.
But even though Bo had no idea where the hell he was going.
No, but in the summer when he
found out, he was at Disneyland when he found out too.
Was he?
Yeah.
The only pushback I have towards Beauvillier is that he's been a half a point per game per player for 2 of the past 4 years, and those 2 years were the prior 2 years to the past 2 years. So Rutherford was talking about how he wanted to get a reclamation project that hasn't worked out in other places that he could potentially get more out of within Vancouver, and good on him for getting Beauvillier. But at the same time, I feel I don't know. Let's use Lou's mantra. If you have time, use it. And especially when it comes down to the crunch of the trade deadline, why the fuck wouldn't you wait for another 3 weeks? See what comes down the pipe, because Bo Horvat is at the number one spot as far as I'm concerned, or was, for a player that's going to be moved, and especially Boston. God, how scary would Boston be with Bo Horvat down the center?
Offered?
I guess the only thing I'm thinking is maybe Lou knows something we don't, and maybe the trade market. We've seen this in the past where the trade market kind of stalls until one guy moves. So maybe he felt he needed to make that move now to get things going.
Or is he thinking about potentially trading him at the trade deadline? And trying.
I think if Lou wants to make a lot of big deals, he might have been talking to people and they said, well, we're not going to do a deal till Horvat goes. Okay, well, then let's make Horvat go.
Maybe. There's a lot of potential within this, and I'm all for fucking chaos, especially when it comes to not my two favorite teams. It really, I think it's very intriguing, because you wouldn't have expected the Islanders to be a part of this.
Yeah,
I
agree with that. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
I believe Lou Lamoriello did say that they're going to try their best to get a long-term deal, and they're going to start working on it now, which will be interesting. As well as, Friedman says he doesn't believe that this is a short-term.
But if I'm Bo, I'm not signing until I know how we do in the playoffs.
Yeah, if you get there.
Yeah.
And he might, they might work on a deal, and he might say, sure, if we get to this round, you can fax in this deal. But I don't think anything gets done if, they don't make it past second round.
Yeah.
All right. Let's leave the Bo conversation for now. I think that there's a lot more to unpack. I think there will be a lot more. Where the Islanders right now, just one other.
Whether or not Bo will play in the All-Star game.
Oh yeah, that's the only other thing. Yeah. I could care less, to be honest with you. I'm sorry.
Is he going? As far as I listen, I have extensive knowledge within the NHL atmosphere, but who the fuck is going?
This is the one year I felt the most disconnect from the All-Star game. Like, we didn't get to pick. We were just told, these are your All-Stars for the year. Deal with it.
Well, then there was the Twitter vote, which was just spammed everyone's Twitter feeds with the hashtags.
But I don't think anybody cared at that point, because it just felt like we were voting for the leftovers.
Yeah.
What was it, Edmonton? Who cared? Stuart Skinner? Who?
Skinner!
Granted, Skinner was really good for the first quarter of the year, but then this last quarter has been kind of very much mediocre, and he's still going to the All-Star game. I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, if he keeps looking mediocre, maybe the emergency goalie will take his spot.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Good old E-Bug.
E-Bug. All right, let's hop to the Flames here. That's not that we could spend more hours on this, but I mean, we're here to talk some Flames. We haven't had Devin, Sean get into some of our conversation that Dan and I had last night, and I want to kind of go back and start with what happened not this Saturday, but the Saturday before, when Jacob Pelche finally made his debut with the Calgary Flames, and he gets the skate. The family is all there. He's on a line with Trevor Lewis and Walker Dewar against Tampa Bay. They provide a hell of a lot of energy. They play their best game of the year against the Tampa Bay Lightning, or one of their best games of the year, and in a 6-3 victory. But what are we talking about?
What is his number? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. Darryl Sutter, after that, commented, what's his number? And it's a long way to go for a 1-year-old to play in the National Hockey League. And I think it really sets the Flames fan base off, I think. And I want to start here because since that press conference, there has been a very different Darryl Sutter presenting themselves to the media. Eric Francis wrote a column about it on sportsnet.ca. John Bean, the president of the Calgary Flames, who was rarely one that has been noted in public, probably in public more often, happened to be at the arena during practice on Monday. So I discussed this with Dan yesterday on the fireside chat, and maybe we'll get everyone's perspective. I think that Darryl Sutter had a little bit of a talking to by someone after that conversation with Jacob Pelche. And I do not think that sat well with the organization at all. And as much as ownership loves Darryl Sutter, I think he did not hit the right button, and someone had a chat with him. And my theory is either Brad had to go and have that conversation, and John said you better talk to him, or I wouldn't even be surprised if some of the veteran players said that was wrong.
Well, I was listening to the Eric Francis show on 960, and on the Merrick show, and all he had to say was that a lot of veteran players, a lot of players said that towards him, good on you for, and it was very Eric Francis is saying the entire interview with Merrick was just him praising Eric Francis praising his own self for the fact that he said this towards Darryl Sutter and challenged him essentially, which is a whole different other thing. But you're probably right. There's a bunch of people within this organization, players, management, owners, that weren't happy with the way that he presented himself, and it was very old school, and it really didn't sit well with me. I know that, and I would say a good 90 to 95% of the fans of the Calgary Flames. We are past this point of being very passive within rookies and how they're treated, and players in general on how they're treated. You know, I thought it was very interesting that Pelche said to a French Quebec newspaper that Darryl went and talked to him separately before he had the press conference saying you played well, and that's through Jacob Pelche that he played well and that he was happy with his performance. But it was more so a fuck you to the media as far as I'm concerned, and like it's just play the goddamn game. Like Darryl Sutter, play the game. Like the media is there to ask questions, so answer them honestly, answer them correctly. You're here, you're getting paid. Don't be a goddamn dick. I'm sorry.
There are guys that are known, like, Tortorella, to be anti-media, and Darryl's never really been that way. I mean, Darryl's not the most talkative guy. I mean, you ask Conroy a question, you get 25 minutes on, did you like your Coke? And he tells you some story from one night in New York. That's not Darryl, but don't be a dick.
Yeah, he was definitely like almost doing his own like Torts impression. And I feel like he's been playing with the media a lot this year. And I don't know why. Like I think he just is bored with this whole the whole dog and pony show that is the media for coaches.
I think I understand what he was trying to do. I just think he did it incorrectly. And I think Darryl is trying to shield Peltier a little bit. And we saw this even before Peltier played. And I think he's trying to get some of the media attention off Peltier so Peltier doesn't have too much attention on him. And the media is looking at him as the savior of this team or something like that. But I don't think he did it the right way.
But it's also right on brand with Darryl in terms of like the tone that he's handled every young player since he's come in. Whether it was Valimaki, whether it was Rudicka, whether it was Phillips, now we got Peltier. He's always been very, very much, doing that. Whether it is to deflect the attention, make sure that they don't have a big head coming up into the NHL or whatever. He's always had this sort of just tough external sort of approach to the kids,
which is in some point is fine. But if I'm Matthew Coronado and I'm hearing that, do I say, wow, this is the guy that I want to go play with? Or do I say, you know what, I'm going to pull an Adam Fox and go somewhere else? Like, I think, it's one thing to say it to Jacob on his own, but you've got to put that front out for the media too. Or if I'm a young guy that's going to be drafted this year and I go, well, I don't want to go to Calgary now.
Well, what is Adam Fox done? Oh, wait, defenseman of the year. Oh, okay, cool. Thanks. I'm just take a step back here and
or if I'm Dustin Wolf and I say, well, geez, what's going to happen when they call me up? Maybe I should not renew there, right?
Totally. And like, I think Kevin, the way that you presented this question, I think is very valid. And the fact that, there's a lot of Calgary Flames organization people who aren't happy with the way that he presented himself. And Dan, I think you having time to reflect on my last podcast, because I was fucking heated about Darryl Sutter and the way that he was conducting himself. It does resonate with me that he was trying to protect Jacob Pelche and making sure that his head doesn't get too big so he can walk through the front door into the dressing room, right? But you got to do it the right way, especially within this era that we are in, within media, within the culture and the game, and making sure that players understand why they're doing certain things and that they're praised and they're loved in a certain way. Because,
and I think Darryl could have achieved the same thing by saying he had a good first night. He did what we expected as a fourth line player. Done.
Yep. He's 21. He's still got work to do. Yep.
Yeah. You know what? We put him on the fourth line. He did what we asked. He had limited minutes because we had some penalty troubles. That's all you got to say.
Yeah.
And I also wonder if Darryl's just tired. Like maybe he's listening too much to the noise. And tired of like all the noise about Phillips, about Pelche, and about why isn't he playing the kids? And that might have been him fighting back again, not in the right way, or even something that he should be doing. But I wonder if that's part of it.
Well,
why is Lucic on that?
Oh, go ahead, Devin.
Just why is Lucic on that second line? It's there's been a lot of questions about how he's deployed his troops and why there are certain players on certain lines, and it's constant. And so I can understand from his standpoint why he was very agitated within that question. But like at the same time, you got to be expecting that
himself.
Exactly. Yes.
We've asked the question on Fireside Chat a few times. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. We saw Phillips come up and not really play. We saw Peltier come up and not really play. Do you think there's a rift between management and the coach where Brad is saying, I'm bringing this guy up for the road trip, and Darryl says, fine, I'm not going to play him? Like, generally they'd be on the same page of who do you want up? And I almost wonder if the Walker Dewar call up was a, sort of pacify Darryl.
I think that you the skeptical side of me says that Darryl is very petty and saying, like you said, that, you can bring him up. I'm not going to fucking play him.
Yep. Just to show you, I'm not going to play him.
Exactly. And that's been the narrative, or that was the narrative for at least 3 weeks before Pelche got, or I guess like a week and a half ago.
And again, Darryl could have avoided all the questions by just playing the kid. Like, I feel
sure.
like Darryl brought this on himself.
But the amount of the ego that's on Darryl, the fact that he just won Coach of the Year, puts pressure on him, whether or not he wants to admit it or not, as far as I'm concerned. And it's not necessary. No. What's better? What's bigger? The team that you always talk about, the veterans that you always talk about, or is about getting W's, as he's talked about before in the past? And I'm very curious to see how this next little bit before the trade deadline really goes, because is he going to force Brad Treliving's hand to make a big swing and get a mediocre middle six winger of Vladimir Tarasenko in and spend all that capital to get a big player in? Or how about you save a little bit of money? You save some capital and let Pelche fucking run with it.
Yeah, I
think Dewar for that matter.
You had the right word in ego there, Dev. I don't think there's pettiness. I think Darryl's too competitive for that. I think it's more he just thinks it's not pettiness. He just thinks he knows better. I think that's what it is. He's like, they'll talk and they'll say, and then Brad will say, yeah, well, I'm bringing up Phillips or Pelche or whatever, and then he'll go, okay, well, I'm still just going to play the players that I think are going to give us the best chance to win.
Which is Lucic on the second line. That's how you win Lord Stanley's mug.
Gross.
Again, I just think he thinks that's the way it is right now, and maybe I think he knows long term that's not the answer, but right now, for whatever reason, he thinks that it's working.
We've been asking this question since Christmas on our show. Do you think maybe it's time to move on from this head coach?
Who the fuck you bringing in?
Signed into a new deal.
Coaches are hired to be fired.
They're hard to be fired.
Sean, I don't think he'd be fired. I think the Flames optically wouldn't fire him. He would become special assistant to the Zamboni driver, something else where they keep him around, but not in a coaching position.
Special assistant to David Ayers. Awesome.
Special assistant to the special consultant for the Wranglers. I don't know. Because, you want them to evaluate all your young guys. I think if you make the trade, I think if you make the change mid-year, you have to give Kirk Muller the job, but I think there's enough guys in the offseason. You could look at a guy like Alain Vigneault. I think there's enough guys out there, whoever lose their job in the offseason, that if the Flames want to spend the money, which has always been their issue, they don't need another Glenn Gulletson as their coach. No. But if they're willing to spend the money, and there's enough guys that they could bring in.
There's your the crux and everything there is, are they willing to spend the money? Because I don't think they are. I think they're going to stick it out for Darryl for the rest of this season and then going into the season after and see what happens.
Are they still paying other coaches?
I believe the Jeff Ward is still being paid.
Jeff Ward is still being paid. This isn't an ownership group that loves to pay coaches. We know this. The test is true as time. But I'm personally curious to what Kevin
head
thinks.
Coach, who would rather pay for it? Not pay.
Hey, you want a cup? W's.
I can find you a coach that has a cup too.
This is where I'm at. I think as stubborn as Darryl has been, I also think that deep down in his heart, I think after the Colorado game, and even after some of what has happened in this first half of the year, he knows this team, what he has done isn't working. And I think we're going to see a different, maybe it's just me being optimistic, but I do think we're going to see a different Darryl in the second half of the year. Which means I think we see Pelche with Kadri and Huberdeau.
Long term?
Yeah. I think I think Pelche is with the team for as long as the Flames are in the playoff mix. I honestly think that I think Darryl's stubbornness. I think you can't look at what Jacob Pelche. You go look back at that Chicago game. That there was one guy that showed up other than Markstrom. One guy that truly showed up and played like that game mattered, and that was Pelche. And I think that's starting to. This team needs something different, and I think Darryl knows it. It needs a different form of energy. It needs a different life. And I think as stubborn as Darryl could be, he also knows what's working and what's not.
I think Darryl's going to keep Peltier there as long as Peltier earns that spot. But I think Peltier is going to be on a really short leash.
It's going to be the shortest leash that's ever leashed.
Well, it's probably a cow leash, right? Yeah, it's probably probably sure. that. But
that's what he's spending his 9 days doing on the farm, is making this leash, cutting leather and
yeah.
My biggest thing is making why not promote him when he was doing the first half of his very, very first game, he was phenomenal. The fact there was vivid memories of Trevor Lewis trying to corral a puck that was very easy to corral, and it would have been a 2-on-1 with Pelche the other way. It's surrounding him to make him succeed and giving him the opportunity. Yes. Okay. Don't make Pelche scared that if once he makes a mistake that he's not going to be able to stay on that line. Right. But give him the confidence of being like, hey, listen, kid, I understand that you're young and that you have a bunch of piss and vinegar. You've done a lot within the AHL, but I'm not gonna, like, if you fuck up once, I'm not gonna bench you. I'm not gonna put you down on the fourth line again. And I really hope that is the facade behind the media bullshit that he's putting forward in front of us. That's my biggest worry.
Well, I also think that Pelche found an advocate in that dressing room in Jonathan Huberdeau, who's taken Pelche under his wing. There's a friendship there, and I do think that plays something into that.
He's the perfect size to be under Jonathan's wing as well.
Yeah, exactly. They're, but, and,
French Canadian, maybe.
And they're,
no, and I think you're right, Kevin. I think that might be the reason that he stays there, especially, Darryl puts so much stock in his veterans. If the veterans say don't want to play with the kid, he'll probably stay there.
Well, and
I
some
think
of these veterans
he probably starts there. I agree with Devin. It'll be a short leash, and even if he starts the game there,
yeah,
you have Ruzicka who's shown well at times, and then the pull in case of emergency Lucic.
Well, and even look at Dylan Dubé, right? Darryl said for years he wasn't enamored with Dubé, and he criticized Dubé, and now Dubé is his first line guy. And I think there's no way that a new kid is going to usurp that, even if he's the better player, because I think Darryl's going to say, well, Dubé, I finally trust. So I think that we know what Peltier's ceiling is on the team this year.
Can I throw another wrench into this conversation, though?
Sure.
You signed Huberdeau for how long?
8 years after this year.
You signed Kadri for how long?
7.
6 years. Yeah.
6 years.
You signed Weegar for how long?
5 years after this year? 6
Something
years?
like that.
I cannot imagine that those three do not have some sort of influence in saying, look, I've signed here for 8 fucking years, 7 fucking years, 6 fucking years. You're not going to waste my time with your games. And there have been reports, and I'm going to say this, reports that some veterans have had to, in LA, even when LA have said, look, Darryl, you need to smarten the fuck up. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something like that happens in this dressing room. This is a team that has cup aspirations. They're not cup contenders this year. That's not what I'm saying. But this isn't, you put all this money in. You asked me to come here to Calgary, and I'm getting a hell of a lot of money, but you need to put me in a situation where I can win. But
again, I think that goes down to, are they asking Darryl to smarten up, or are they going to Brad saying, if this guy's not going to do it, find a different guy? And I really think it's going to come down to one of them is going to have to go in the offseason, either Brad or Darryl.
I think, yeah. You're talking, you're talking about Brad, who doesn't have a contract for next year, and they have Darryl for another 2 years after this. It's hard to really have that fine of a line, which I like.
But within saying that, if they have two different options or outlooks on this team, you can't keep them both around.
No, but you're looking at Brad Treliving, who's been here for how long? Is it almost a decade?
Yeah,
that he's been here, right?
8 years.
And what has he done, right?
Well, I guess it depends how you look at it. I don't think we can argue that Brad has put the right players on the ice most years, and that's his job.
Yep.
Right? What they do on the ice is the coach's job. But I think if we look at Brad, even if you look at this last summer, I don't think another GM could have done as good a job. I think when we look at Brad, even the years they've underperformed, the Flames have had the right guys on the roster.
And I agree with you. And I mean, how many times have I run on because Sean has been dissing on the GM of the Calgary Flames? I just have a hard time because I feel like, okay, let's peel back Darryl Sutter. Darryl Sutter, I feel like he should have given Walker Duehr a bit of a bump in promotion within that one game that he scored, right? And he's been playing very, very well, Walker Duehr has. And he's been playing better than Milan Lucic. He's had a lot more energy. He's been involved with the game and as Glenn Gullickson says, in the fabric of the game more. And I appreciate that of what this player, he's made the most opportunity is what he has been given. So the fact that you have a coach that isn't really giving the time of day to these type of players, as far as like, the media goes, I feel like Darryl Sutter has a short leash, but then you look at it and you have Brad Treliving, who's been here for, like I said, 8 years. And what has he done? Right? He's put the best players on the ice that he could have. And if you really break down every single year, he's had his blunders, but overall, I think he's done a great job.
Earlier too, he hasn't been able to bring in the right coaches. Like, I think he's done what he could with the handcuffs he's been given.
Exactly. Yeah. And to go back to your question, Dan,
yeah,
if it was me, I would get rid of Darryl Sutter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not that has to break down the fact that he's not giving the opportunity to the young players within this lineup. And I think Walker Duer deserves better than the fourth line right now. And that's not someone who's been talked about, I think, enough within this lineup within the past.
I agree, Devin.
Month? 2 months?
And Kevin, going back to what you were saying about Darryl maybe getting reprimanded, if you look that week, a whole bunch of the media availables and stuff were Kirk Muller. So the Flames may have even put him in timeout for a bit.
Yeah.
After that happened, they had a lot of availabilities with assistant coaches and that sort of thing. So I kind of wondered, did Darryl get, locked in the barn for a week or something like that?
Yeah, I don't, and this is, to me, I wonder, honestly, Brad has, in a lot of ways, navigated the Flames through some really difficult situations. Like, you just look back at the history in terms of, you could argue his on-ice success. I think that there's some argument there, but he navigated this team through the Bill Peters situation. He navigated this team through the pandemic.
Matthew Tkachuk being immature.
Yep.
He was right behind him when he was doing his first press conference of his disciplinary actions.
Yep. He pulled off. He did what no other GM. He pulled off. He got a massive amount for something that a lot of people didn't see happen. He's been very cordial to the media, and I do think that plays very well. I think he's very articulate in front of that. I think that there's a part of me that keeps saying that the ownership loves Darryl Sutter, but I think there's another part of me that realizes that the benefit for this organization going forward is Brad Treliving, and I would suggest for the younger fan, and I don't know, I think some of the younger fan is turned off by Darryl Sutter's comments, and even Matthew Coronado. And any other future player there, Dustin Wolf, Jerome Poirier, who's going to be a project that I think the Flames are going to have to look at one way or the other. It's hard for me to sit here and say that Darryl Sutter is the future of
with all these contracts we talked about earlier. I think the Flames have a 3-year window to win, and I'm not sure right now Darryl's the coach to get them that win in that 3 years. Keep him around, keep him on somehow so he gets his cup, which is what he came back for, but bring in a different head coach.
But the other side of me also wonders if this stubborn old person says,
"You darn kids, get off my bench."
Well, maybe part of it is he sees what Jacob Pelche and Walker do, or there's from the player side, which is the other side that we talked about last night. This player group has to hold themselves in some sort of account as well. And let's be fair, there's at least 4 players, 5 that I think are going through a significant adjustment this year. Lindholm with 2 new line mates. Kadri, Huberdeau, Weegar, new contracts, new team, new situation. And Jacob Markstrom dealing with the Edmonton Oilers series. Oh, and I think he is still dealing with some PTSD with that. And I think Darryl has to look at everything and say, and I think the players, I think this organization needs to come together and say, what is the best way to win? They're not in a situation, they're not in a playoff situation right now. This is not acceptable for anyone in the organization. And I think I think that this team needs to, I'm having faith that they come to Jesus moment. And I think we see more Pelche. I think we see more Walker Duer. and I think we see less Milan Lucic.
Do we see more Daniel Vladar?
I think he starts the road trip.
I think that's really the question if Darryl's turned the corner or not, is how much we see Vladar.
The numbers do not deny the fact that Vladar has been the better goalie, whether or not he's getting run support or not. I have a hard time with that narrative that's been out there for the past, 2 weeks, that Markstrom has not had the proper run support. Markstrom needs to make the saves that are able to transition the Flames to get those goals. The amount of times that I've seen a really well done penalty kill that goes back the other way, whether or not it's 5-on-4 and 5-on-3, and within the next minute and a half after that penalty kill has been or the penalty's been killed off, that there's been a goal on the other team is ridiculous. So making those saves at those opportune times really does make the difference within the trust, whether or not it is consciously or subconsciously within the Flames organization is huge. So run Vladar as far as you can, and hopefully if he comes back down to earth, that you have a Markstrom ready to go and willing and able to get that confidence back. But Vladar has been statistically, and it's just so blatantly obvious that he needs to be starting games.
We've seen Vladar in 3 of the last 4, so I think he is getting the starts.
Well, what I would say is the numbers are triggering that Markstrom's not getting the run support. So if you're going on this on pure analyticals, I think that there's some argument there. But my eyes are telling me that the Flames are playing at a better pace when Vladar is in net than Markstrom is in net. Their Flames are playing tight when Markstrom's in net. They're not often good starts. They're not handling the puck the same. They're not engaged the same way.
I think part of that is because Markstrom has let goals in early.
Yep.
The Markstrom we're seeing this year reminds me a lot of Markstrom from 3-4 years ago, when that was the book on him. He would be fantastic for most of the game, but he would give up inopportune goals at bad times, whether it was early in the game, late in the period, or just bad goals, a bad goal here and there. It sucks the life out of the players, and then you end up chasing the game, which I think is part of what's happened here. And while I agree that I think, he probably hasn't had the run support, I do think that his ability to make the save at the right time isn't there this season, which is huge. And that never shows up in stats.
Especially in playoffs, though, right?
Opportunity.
Thank you.
Time. Yeah.
That goal is huge within
that
playoffs.
One beer's starting to kick in, Devin.
It really is. And that can be a game changer and a series changer within the playoffs. So
it was a series changer against the Oilers. Sorry to interrupt, but it was a complete series changer.
Yep. So go, especially since you're out of the playoffs right now, and the games played isn't really in your favor within the teams that are in the playoffs or in the wild card in your division. It fucking run with it. You're here to get W's, as he has put before. So run with the guy who's playing well right now. And I brought this up before. You have Markstrom, who is a phenomenal goaltender. You had Fleury, who's a phenomenal goaltender. And then you have an up-and-comer of Matt Murray, and you have an up-and-comer of Daniel Vladar, as Carl is just yelling in the background. And I'm sorry if you're hearing that, but he's obviously pissed as well. I think so. I think so. But he yes.
I don't watch show enough. Obviously, is Carl the Oilers fan? You have hostage in the other room, or
he's a fat orange cat.
Okay,
so yeah. It's one of those things where yeah, go with your gut. Yes,
I agree.
You have
And I
Stanley
think you
Cups
also have to
within your
figure
back
out what
pocket, but
Vladar is. Is Vladar a starter? Is he a 1B? Is he just a backup with a good year? You're paying the guy $2.5 million next year. You got to know what you got.
it's really hard to tell though, because he having that mentality of being a backup is different than being.
But
a
that's why I
number
think
one.
Darryl's got to let him run with it for a bit.
Totally, and even if he runs with it within this year, I feel like that mentality of being like, oh, I'm an underdog. Yeah, let's fucking go.
I think
and
if
then
you
once
run
he
with
has
it
that
this year, you go into camp next year and say, guys, no one owns this net.
Totally.
Compete for it.
Absolutely. And who knows? Dustin Wolf could be pushing for that job too. Right? And it's good to have competition. It is,
and
really
that's
good
why
to
I
have
think you've got to
competition.
let him do it, because you got to see what you've got there and where does Wolf fit into that pipeline.
And that's what I also think has been missing with the Flames this year, has been the lack of competition. And that's why I think we're seeing duds this year in Chicago, in Columbus, and some of these easy wins is because there's no competition. I think there's a lot of comfortable players on this roster. And that's why I think you have to be playing a Walker Dewar and a Jacob Pelche a lot more. I know that everybody is enamored with Andrew Mangiapane, and I think that there's a very valid point that Backlund, Coleman, and Mangiapane have been the Flames' best line this year. But I'm sorry, I don't think Andrew Mangiapane has been nearly good enough.
I think the Flames overvalued some of their assets. I think they overvalued what they have in Mangiapane. I think for years they've overvalued what they have in Dubé, and I think they expected more from both those guys with their top two leaving and weren't able to get it.
Yeah.
But with Mangiapane, you quote unquote underrated him for how many years? How many 1-year contracts has he done? How many years has he really been okay? He's outplayed what he's presented towards upper management, right? And this is the 1 year that we're like, okay, we'll give you a 3-year deal.
But I think that they probably looked at him signing that $5.8 million deal and saying he can take some of the load off Johnny or Matthew. And I don't know that he's able to take that step. I think he was sort of at his peak where he was going to be before that. And I've always thought that Dubé was a third liner.
Well, and I think Dubé's he is out. He shouldn't be on that first line.
No,
I don't like. There's no way. But once again, who the fuck are you going to put in there?
Well, I think that was Mangiapane's spot, but he never achieved that.
I think
did he get the chance to do that though? That's the other thing. Is that we? Sorry, Sean, go for it.
Say both of them are just good middle six wingers.
Mm-hmm.
Mangiapane came off of a career year, got paid. Dubé's got another year after this year left on his deal.
That was a show me deal.
Let's see what happens there. He's had a decent season, 27 points in 50 games.
But that's a $16 million third line. That's expensive.
Yeah, but that's the issue with the Flames right now. Is just they haven't had, as you guys are talking about, they haven't had the guys that they wanted to step up, and they need that to happen within this year or next year. Yep. Dan, you talked about how you think that they've got a 3-year window. I think it's 2. I think it's this year and next year, because after next season, you've got Backlund off the books, Lindholm off the books, Toffoli off the books, Noah Hannafin off the books, Zadorov off the books. Like you do have a lot. Like I think of cap coming off, but there's Hannafin and Lindholm specifically are going to want a lot of.
And that's even more reason to maybe sacrifice this year, if you will, and say, let's try Peltier, let's try Dewar, let's try, Zari, let's see what we've got for next year.
Absolutely.
Let alone Dubé will need a new contract at that point. Ruzicka will need a new contract at that point.
Those are going to be cheap deals.
Most maybe. Tanev's off the book. Tanev's contracts done in 2 seasons as well. So you're going to have a much different looking team after the next season.
And that's, I think, also part of the reason I'm so disappointed with the team this year, because they're squandering their prime years.
Yeah. So then what do you guys expect? What's going to happen at this trade deadline?
I think they go. I think they swing for the fences.
I don't. I think Brad has always said, you need to tell me, you'll tell me on the ice what you want me to do. That's always been his philosophy. and they haven't told him. They've told him not to swing for the fences. That's based on
when I say swing for the fences, I don't think they go for a rental. I think they're going for with someone who's under contract for this year and next.
I don't think they
at the very
can.
least.
They don't have any contract room
they
after
don't.
all these extensions. I think they got to get money off the books, not on the books.
Well, they've got Lucic coming off the books after this season.
Which is Huberdeau. Huberdeau's my
Yeah, and then you got to find money for Uyghur. You got to find money for Vladar. Those are big extensions. You've got to find, by my count, about 18 million. Not quite. Let's call it.
Which is so hard because this is the window. This is where this organization is at, and
that's even more reason to bring up cheap guys like Peltier.
Exactly. Let them fucking run. Let them go within this top 9, especially with Backlund.
Yeah,
Backlund's having he literally said right before he left for his little vacation here that he's played his best first half of the year that he's ever played, which I agree with. He's been amazing. But that's your third fucking line. Coleman, he has been as advertised within this year. He's not been amazing. He's not been terrible. And like Dan said, Mangiapane's been okay.
I thought Coleman looked the best he's looked as a Flame.
Agreed, for sure. But he's not he hasn't looked as good as he was down in Tampa.
No.
And yes, that's 2.5 years removed, or I guess 2 years removed, or a year and a half, I guess. But it's still it's not good enough. Is this team good enough? The whole thing about talking about the Islanders before, there are at least 1.5 players short of a top 6. We are 1.5, like the Calgary Flames are 1.5 players away from a top 9. And we're talking about a Pacific Division, which was very gettable at the beginning of the year. You had LA playing out of their mind. You have Seattle playing out of their mind. Are they going to be able to come back down to earth in time for the Flames to get in? I don't fucking know. I have no idea.
I think there's a lot of parallels between the Islanders and the Flames.
Yeah,
I agree for sure.
What I hear, I think this is just to go back with one of the frustrations with the handling of the young players is last year there was found money. We had Oliver Shillington, found money. Adam Ruzicka, found money. The Flames had the opportunity for found money in Jacob Pelche to put him in earlier. And even in training camp, let's take this all the way back. You had an opportunity to possibly just experiment with the fact of throwing Kadri and Pelche together in an exhibition game. Let's try it out. What the hell? It's not for wins and losses. Let's see what happens. And maybe you would have been able to find that cheap top 6 option and found that instead of trying to have to go out and spend assets and something that you don't really have to go find it. That's that found money. And Sutter, I'm sorry. The thing that bothers me is how Sutter handled the lineup after that Oilers game in October, where they lost, but to drastically change the lineup the way that he did and be stubborn about it up to this point, it probably is what's going to cost the Flames in the long run.
How upset are we with the fact that it feels like Darryl Sutter is bigger than the team? Right? And that's the way that it feels.
Last year I was okay with that. Like last year I thought Darryl was the captain of this team and I was okay with that. And I think now it's a bad thing now.
And like it doesn't matter what he says behind the doors. It's how he's presented within the front of this media, right? But we've been down this road. To Kevin's point, you had how many players having career years, found money. It was a lot.
Yeah, and now all of a sudden you didn't give the opportunity for that organically to kind of develop. And I think that this is what ended up hurting. And you put like Lucic with Kadri, like no wonder why Hubert, like the lineup didn't work.
It was whether or not he like Darryl Sutter was being very favoritive towards Lucic, considering this was his last year, considering Kev, you brought this up either this last podcast, the podcast before, of whether or not how fragile is Milan Lucic. And it's like, okay, are you for the veteran players on this team? Are you for, or are you for the success of this franchise? And that's the biggest thing that has been the question mark.
And I don't think it has to be one of the
Calgary
other.
Flames. Well, it kind of does, though, does it not?
In Darryl's world, it does, but I think you can put both those guys in the lineup. You put Lucic on the fourth line.
But like, okay, so you have Walker Dewar, who is better than Lucic. Do we not agree with that?
Yeah, but I think Lucic could be your 13th forward and still be a key contributor to this team.
Well, what about his Darryl Sutter's right-hand man and Brett Ritchie? You know, he's a good 13.
Trevor Lewis.
Yeah, exactly. And like,
I would not.
I love Trevor Lewis.
I think
on his
really
fourth liner, number 6. They're all interchangeable.
But hold on. No, Trevor Lewis, I think, has done exactly what has been needed, and I don't think he's been part of the problem with the Flames this year.
Agreed. And Lucic being on that second line, he was being the best Lucic he could be at this point in his career. But he was not put in the right role to succeed. So that's the biggest question mark within this organization is, okay, does Darryl Sutter have autonomy over the GM Brad Treliving? I don't think so. But that like having that thought process is fucked.
Well, Devin, I asked Kevin the question last night. Does it come down to the fact where we say we need a GM that's going to play with Darryl, or we need a coach that's going to play with the GM? Like, is it going to kind of be one or the other?
We need a different. If everything is true within the media and how we feel as fans, then we need a new coach. I'm sorry, we need a new coach. Then it comes down to ownership, whether or not they're willing to let go of this coach, even after he just had a 2-year extension after this year.
But you can put
and
Darryl
even though
anywhere.
they don't want to get rid of him, I think there's a way you can get him to retire and not pay him out.
But will he? But we're talking about a guy who potentially has a massive ego on him, and who just won the fucking Jack Adams last year. But
awards don't mean anything to him. Only wins do.
My whole thing is that there's so many question marks outside of this roster that is hindering the process of this team and making sure that you have the kids of this organization being able to thrive properly, and you're looking at a winning window, quote unquote, within the next. I'm kind of with Sean. It doesn't feel like 3 years. It feels like 2 years.
So maybe the better way to phrase this then is this season salvageable, or do we just play the young guys and get what we get?
The answer is yes. You play the young guys, and because it's not about like they're not as bad as saying the young guys. They are better than the average fourth liner on this team.
For sure. But let's say those guys falter a little bit, which they will at some point. Rookies do. Do you still keep playing them through that? Or do you say we're here to win, we got to take you out or demote you? Or do you say we're putting the young guys in and we get what we get out of them?
Well, I think you have a better chance of winning and putting the young guys in than having Lucic on that fucking second line.
I don't disagree.
I think you got to play your best lineup, Dan, and the best lineup to me is right now, forward-wise, Lindholm, Dubé, Toffoli, the Kadri, Huberdeau, Pelche, Backlund, Coleman, Mangiapane,
and if Pelche,
Lewis Dewar, and Ruzicka, that kind of combination. That's the 12 forwards I would go with.
And if Pelche isn't able to stand up to that, Walker Dewar is very formidable to be on that second line.
I just don't think he's the goal scorer that Pelche is potentially.
No. You're talking about a role player within that role, within that second line. I forget who has been the color commentator other than Kelly Rudy.
Greg Millen.
Greg Millen has been talking about Walker Dewar as a Zach Hyman type of player, and I can see it. I can see that very similar type of player and being like, okay, let's get dirty. Let's get in the corners. Let me pass it out to Huberdeau, and Huberdeau has a really good shot as well. I think that he needs to utilize a little bit more. But you have those role players on those lines for a reason, and I think that he would be a very formidable second liner, better than Lucic, and
I
better
agree
than
better than
Coleman,
Lucic, but I
and
don't
better than
think
Mangiapane.
I don't think Walker Duehr has the same upside as a Hyman.
No, well,
I don't
then
think he doesn't have the same offensive upside as a Hyman,
but he
I
has
do
the
think-
same work ethic and
Yeah, I
better
think
work
it's-
ethic and speed than a Lucic,
The
which is
Flames-
my point.
Yeah, the Flames play with absolutely are playing with a much better pace with a Pelche and a Duehr in the lineup than they do with a Lucic. I think that to me, I don't always go by the analytics on this, but my eye test is telling me that quicker pace, quicker to the puck, quicker to the boards, quicker.
So again, Devin, let's say we go with what you said and we try Duehr on the second line, and it's not quite gelling. I think, again, go back to my point, do we keep sort of trying it, or do we say, well, we're running for the playoffs, we got to demote him because it's not quite going the way we want?
Well, who are you putting there then is my question.
Well, I think you can run the top six of Dubé, Lindholm, Toffoli, Peltier, Kadri, Huberdeau and be good enough.
I would agree with you, but if you are looking for a shakeup, Duehr is the next man up within that thought process. And depending on whether or not Mangiapane is playing to that same caliber, you have three guys within there. Ruzicka, he's too up and down. His ups are really good, but he tends to lose himself. That's why he got. That's why he's a fourth round draft pick, is because he wasn't able to have that consistency. He has that upside.
I still think I would make sure that would be an option as well. You've got Trevor Lewis who can center your fourth line.
You definitely could run that risk. It's just it's not even a risk. It's like, okay, that's a fourth man up essentially out of those top three that I just listed.
See, I would have Ruzicka just because I think Darryl would have Ruzicka over Duehr at this point for that spot on the second line if Pelche doesn't work out.
I'd say that's a crying shame if that's the case. And
the question is, where does the Hornet fit in here?
He's another fourth liner, but he's also someone who's quicker than most of the other fourth liners that they have out on there, other than Duehr.
But then we're talking about Darryl Sutter being very veteran forward. Like I think I love this conversation, but is this ever going to come down to what we're thinking?
Well, let me throw another wrench into this conversation, and this is something that Dan and I debated last night. And by the way, we've come to the same. We haven't come to the same conclusions on this, but the Calgary Wranglers are in a Calder Cup contending position. At what point do you say? And I'm just curious. At what point do you say, okay, maybe it might be valuable for a Jacob Pelche and Walker Duehr to go on a Calder Cup run and not be on in this organization, and see how far they get with the Calder in a playoff run, and go, okay, let's see where the Wranglers go and gain playoff experience, although it's not Stanley Cup experience. What does that play into this at some point?
The Calgary Flames have to be out of the running for the playoffs.
I'm with you on that. That's my answer. That's where I'd be at too. If they were in where the Canucks are right now, I would agree that they should be doing what the Canucks are doing with Podkolzin and Höglander and now Turatu, where they're going to marinate them in the AHL. Right now, when they're in the experience that Pelche and Duehr could be getting at the NHL level, where you're playing meaningful games, trying to get into the playoffs or as high into the playoffs as possible, that's more valuable than. But are you robbing Peter to pay Paul? If you take all the best guys off the AHL roster, are you then depriving other prospects who aren't those five we named of having that playoff experience?
It's not it's not a very definitive being like, okay, we're out of the playoffs, let's go. Like the chances that we're going to be, the Flames are going to be within a playoff run is very much within the realm of going into game 82. That's the reality of it, right? But if you depending on who's in front of you, there's a lot of what my point is that there's a lot of variables within this conversation of making sure that, yes, you want to make sure that the young players have that experience of doing a playoff run, And when does that playoff run start? Is it after the 82 game season?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Right?
That's why that's what I'm saying. I'm saying you could send Pelche and do when the Flames are out of the playoffs, if they're out of the playoffs, you can send Pelche and Dewar down and they can do the same thing like you've done now, right? You've sent Pelche, you've sent Dewar down. They're playing games in
He got 2 points in his first game back down.
Yeah. And Darryl was there. So, and then I just think you bring them up, and I think it brings a different energy to this team. This team is lacking a lot of emotion and energy and just like it just is. And I think Pelche and Dewar add that in like just to me in terms of going through the trade deadline. It's not only the asset part that concerns me, it's just you're bringing in another guy to this roster that's already been through all of these adjustments. Like, let this team kind of gel.
And the whole thing within that as well is like, yeah, I said this before Pelche got in to the lineup, is that they lacked the desire and the love of the game again. And I just really have a hard time thinking about, okay, you bring in a Van Riemsdyk, you bring in a Domi, and is that going to make or break the Calgary Flames? Yes, it brings you depth. Unless things change within this trajectory of after the All-Star break, that doesn't make much sense to me. No.
And I think if we look at this and we say, you know what, this team's got 2 or 3 years, do we really want to be mortgaging draft picks? I think right now, making those picks, which is what it's going to take to make any big deal, either picks or prospects, are something the Flames need, because I think they're about to go through a cycle where they need as many young assets as they can get.
And right now they're projecting just under $3 million of cap space going into next year, which isn't ideal.
And yes, we've had some good years of picking well in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, but you've got to start getting 1st and 2nd round picks again.
Yep. And making them hit. If you don't, then you're the next decade of the Calgary Flames is going to be goddamn shitty to watch.
Yep. And we've seen teams that have gone all in every year and had no picks, and those teams have struggled for a long time to rebuild what's in the cupboards. And to me, if we think Peltier is ready, I always say, who's next up then? Like, you've got to have that development cycle constantly churning. So if Peltier is on the NHL team, who's behind him?
And the other thing is, if you're not within that first 3 teams in your division, what the fuck are you doing? I'm sorry. Yeah. You have the lottery balls in the outset of it, and then you have the lottery balls right before the trade deadline. Which would you rather pick, the long view or the short term?
I agree.
Well, the one thing that I will say, I think this year, every year there's upsets. So, I'm not saying the Flames can just get in and things can happen, but, I also don't like, it really depends on who finishes first in a specific division. I think that there's an upset in the waiting there for sure, but
absolutely the consistency is not there with the Flames though, and that's what's concerning us.
That's
each
my worry
game
as
is a goddamn crapshoot,
and we saw that in the Edmonton series, right? You never knew which Flames team you were going to get.
Yeah,
shift to shift.
Absolutely, right? And that is the detriment of the Calgary Flames, is you have no idea what the hell you're going to get night in, night out. Yeah, whether are you going to get good goaltending from Markstrom? Are you going to get the run support for Markstrom? Is Vladar going to be staying on his head? How good is that top 4D? How good is that top 6 forwards? I if I was betting, I would not bet the Flames to be successful within the playoffs, and that sucks.
Yeah, and you touched on something there, Dev. Like we've talked a lot about the forwards. I have not I think the mix on the blue line's not right as well. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington.
I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Shillington. I think it's the best it can be without Sh
But the other question is, do we know what Shillington is? He had 1 year of greatness, and that's beside arguably the best defenseman on the Flames.
But I think even if he's playing on your 5-6, this defense is a lot better than with Stone every night or Gilbert every night.
Agreed, but is that going to amount to more wins? Maybe it'll within that 3-on-3. Considering what is it, 9 overtime losses that the Calgary Flames have had, maybe that'll even out to 6 overtime losses and 3 more wins. But either way, even if you put those 3 wins on the Flames year, they're still not a playoff team.
But I mean, we talked about how, we don't know if they're playing well in front of Markstrom, and I wonder if, more solid defense might fix some of those issues too. Like, I wonder if it's a little bit of a dominoes effect.
But is Shillington really good in that defensive zone?
I don't know. We've seen a lot of growth in him, though. I mean, remember there was a time when we didn't think Shillington would be back, and then he had a great season. Like, I'm wondering if there's a next step there or not.
Well, even if he's like, let's.
I mean, there's a time he was worse than Connor Mackey, and we all thought he wouldn't be back.
But okay, I'm not, like, with all due respect to Oliver Shillington, I don't know what's going on. I have no inside information. I just don't think it's reasonable to expect him to come back.
Not this year.
And even if he comes back next year, what's he going to look like after not being in the league for a year?
Yeah,
exactly.
And I'm sure he's skating, but
he's skating, but he's not skating with a top tier team over there, and even skating is different than being a game speed.
He's practicing with the 3rd-tier team over there, a 3rd-tier team.
And the other big question mark now, unfortunately, is the health of Chris Tanev and where he's at. And I think if the Flames are going to be making a big splash, I don't think it's up front.
It has to be a defense, and
For sure.
and you know what? And I'll just let's pat ourselves on the back. While there was a bunch of Flame fans out there who were saying that this defense was elite. We did not say that. We didn't say that. We said this defense was solid, not elite, and we're seeing it right now.
Sorry, Kev, go for it.
Anderson and Hanifin have taken steps, but I don't think Hanifin has been consistent. I don't think either of them have been truly consistent. I think Anderson is making a huge strides, but I think, still some work. I think still a little bit of work is needed in both of them. And Tanev, God love him, and he came back. And I you know what? I'm a Tanevologist, but it's
a Tanevologist.
I am really hard pressed.
Is that like a fancy name for a stalker?
It's my belief.
You're the one talking about peering at Lindholm through a.
That makes me a Lindholmologist.
But
Well, and I start wondering if Tanev's on the downswing. Like, he got hurt last year. For all we know, he's hurt this year. I think we've seen the best years of Chris Tanev.
Unfortunately.
I think
he's only 33. Come on.
Unfortunately, I think that the miles are starting to catch up to him, and that's why I think it's not, if you move him down to a bottom 6 role, or like the 3rd pair, and you can find another top 4, that makes the blue line a lot better.
But I would rather shop for that guy in the offseason than the deadline.
When you do that, it's also good. You can also make it a left shot guy, so that's going to be less expensive, because you can just move Weegar back to his natural side. But I think I think that's, if they're going to swing for the fences, I think that's what they're going to do. It'll be for a top 4 defenseman, not for a forward, even though Dev, you did say that you think they're like a player and a half away from a good top 9, but that's all on Pelche to see if he can fill that role.
I agree, Sean. I think you've got the guys internally that might be able to do that.
If they're going to get a top 4 defenseman, it has to be a veteran that brings some stability within that back end there, because you have Hannafin, who's 26. You have Anderson, who's 26. You have Zadorov, who's 27. Mackenzie Weegar, yes, he's 29, but he doesn't have that stability. He doesn't have. How many times within a game does he throw a pizza up the middle, or the amount of giveaways that that defenseman has? You need to make sure that you're surrounding that top four with a solid defenseman, and I don't know if that's out there within this trade market. So I'm with Dan with that. You should trade for him in the offseason. And I'm not saying this is a wash of a season with
whether you trade for him or go shopping for him. I just think there's more options in the offseason.
Oh, always are, for sure. You can get by with that top 9 that you have right now and really hope that at least 2 players within each line is able to thrive and carry that line. But if that's not the case, God, I'm very. I don't know if you guys have really sensed my tone within this podcast. I'm very skeptical of the Flames and their ability to get past the first round, let alone get in the fucking playoffs.
But Devin, I think that's being logical and realistic. I mean, as Flames fans, when was the last time we saw them go past round 2?
It feels like 04, man. It really does.
It has been 04.
And even
has it been 04?
Yeah, it has.
It's been 04, yeah.
And even talking about that defenseman they need, to me, it's another reason to keep your first round pick. Like, let's draft and develop internally instead of going and buying an expensive option.
Yeah, that is going to
I'm looking at sort of left shot, sort of steadying defenseman.
Don't say Lucien.
The rental market, Shane Gostisbehere doesn't fit that role.
And he's
Eric
injured.
Gustafsson does not fit that role. Dmitry Orlov, maybe.
Yeah,
Ryan Graves won't be available.
Washington's still in that race, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oli Mata.
No.
Ian Cole on Tampa. Brian Dumoulin on Pittsburgh. Dmitry Kulikov on Anaheim. He's a bit too.
Nope.
Vladislav Gavrikov from Columbus.
Maybe.
I think
the price would be too high if they aren't willing to.
And that's why I say maybe.
Let's see.
But I don't want to pay I'm okay with those guys, but I'm not okay with those guys at deadline prices.
No, exactly. Yes, and that's the point.
That's my issue.
The lemon isn't worth the squeeze at that point.
Okay, there's one other name that's been out there. Jake McCabe's name has come up.
That price point is too high. He's what is he, 26, 27? That's right in his prime. There's no way that Chicago at a rebuild is not asking for a first and a prospect, or a second and a prospect and a B prospect. Like
Jake McCabe is 29 years old, signed for 2 more years after this at $4 million.
Like I said, 27.
Yeah, let Edmonton have him.
And I think if we say that they're going to bring in McCabe, my question is then who do you move out in the offseason to afford him? Because as we talked about, they need money.
Just under $3 million.
I mean,
projected.
To me, if you're going to bring him McCabe, you've almost then got to buy out Tanev or something, which they're not going to do.
No. Yeah,
it might be a Shillington buyout potentially, depending on what's happening.
But at 2.5, that's not going to cover McCabe.
No, it's not. It really is. No.
And I mean, it's possible that depending on what the situation is, if Shillington's not back, they can put him on they can put him on a LTIR or whatever, and then you have that cap room to play with for the trade deadline. And maybe with that, you could play with something. I
believe if they really wanted to, if he doesn't come back, they could say that he failed to report and buy him out without the cap hit.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a business side of things for sure.
Dan, I don't think they can do that.
No?
I think he would just go on to LTIR.
Okay.
Yeah.
I honestly think the Flames would just want to support him anyway. Whatever's going, I don't know what's going on, but I think that's the most important thing, and I don't think they would want to buy him out.
But if you buy him out, you give him a bunch of cash. I mean, he's still making the same money either way.
Yeah,
but you're not with a team, and do you still have the same availability for some of the supports that is possibly needed in this
That's
situation.
true. Yeah, we'd have to see if he still gets the PA support then.
Yeah, that would be my concern.
I
I
don't
think-
see
yeah, I think
Shillington coming back. I don't think that he will be available for next year for the Calgary Flames. So this will be, it's either he'll go in LTIR, I think, and not being able to physically and mentally be there, because I do believe that it is a mental thing that he's going through.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I'm just
I don't
you know,
wanna
I listen. I'm speculating. You can call me out for it, but
I'm
everything-
not. I'm not going to call you up. I don't know what it is, but I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
What is whatever it is?
Yep.
It's obvious he needs some sort of support, and
For sure.
yeah.
Yep. And the only reason, and if he needs that support and he still wants to play hockey, I think maybe his NHL days are done and he keeps playing back home for a team local to him. And
Yeah. Anything else within the Flames?
I think we've beaten the Blasty to dead.
Blasty.
Blasty's finally dead. Sweet.
Oh, Blasty's live right here.
I don't have to see that jersey anymore. Just the pedestal then.
Yeah.
I don't mind the pedestal. I love the pedestal.
It's grown on me.
Just like
Yeah,
you have
sure.
with me.
I'll sit at the pedestal level as long as you tell me I'm not Heritage Classic level with you.
No comment.
Some other things I wanted to talk about here with Devin on, I think it would be a good perspective. John Tavares played his 1,000th game
Who?
this weekend. John Tavares.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Pajama boy.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Yeah. Yeah.
You've already answered my question. I do think in some ways he never turned out to be that superstar we were all expecting. And I think, he got that huge contract and with all of that. And I don't know if we could say he's lived to that, but I think that was such an impossible contract to live with. But I think it's a significant
I think part of that's the
accomplishment.
market he's in too.
Yep. And the expectations around that market and all of that. I think he's underappreciated for sure. I think he turned out to be a damn good player, not the superstar everyone expected, but I don't think he's, he had a Canadian Olympic run on the team. I appreciate him. I think it'll be an interesting question if he's a Hall of Famer or not, but I wouldn't say he's underrated, but I would say he's underappreciated.
He is underappreciated within that market. The amount of stability that he brought to that dressing room, I think, is very. It should be noted and should be recognized within that market, because it is very high tempered, and yes, he didn't put up the numbers that he should, and he's doing very, very well for what he's done in the past in according to this year. But the amount of leadership that John Tavares has brought to that dressing room, into I'd say it's more so off the ice that the amount of respect that he deserves. And there's a lot of people who I'm sure would disagree with me within he's worth that contract. No, he's not worth that contract. Not every single, but the majority of the free agency contracts are really not worth what that player is. But that dressing room of Toronto really needed stability, and he came in at the right time to bring that, especially with everything that was happening with Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and the lack of a veteran presence and notoriety because of how high Marner and Nylander and Matthews were within that organization. I think, he just needs to be recognized for that alone. Yes, he has 2 years left, at $11 million. It's a shit ton of money, but I think it bleeds through that organization more than just on the ice.
I agree. And I think that's the one thing people forget about these Canadian markets. These guys do a lot more in their market than just what's on the ice. We see that here in Calgary. It's true in Toronto.
Vancouver as well. Yeah. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I'm looking at his stats here, and because he's got 140-goal season, 4 30-goal seasons. He's scored 20 in every other season except for the Great White North season, where he had 19. So he's got 412 goals, 946 points. He's going to get to 1,000 points. If he can get to 500 goals, I think, because when you look at it, it doesn't scream Hall of Fame career, but then when you add up the totality and you look at who else is in there.
And the fact he's playing in Toronto, I think, is going to help his votes. Exactly. Yep. That's exactly what I was going to bring up.
I think he could, especially if he hits those milestones. If he hits 500 goals, if he hits 1,000 points.
You got to expect that he's going to have at least one more contract outside of this existing one, whether or not it's going to be in it could be Arizona, for God's sakes. I hope he doesn't, but he's just such a leader, right? And that you're going to have those organizations that are going to be looking for those type of quote unquote value deals, but a leader within the dressing room.
I've heard him compared a lot to Giordano in that way, that what he does is measured off the ice more than on the ice.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it'll be up to what he wants to do, because after he'll be 34. He'll be turning 35 to start the 25-26 season. When he'll be looking for a new deal. Is that the end of John Tavares, or will he be looking for one more go? I think a lot will depend on whether or not the success that the Leafs have in the next 2.5 years. If they're able to win a cup, I wouldn't be surprised to see him ride off into the sunset. If they don't, I think he might try and go somewhere where he thinks he could do.
I agree. I think he might do the Jerome and try to chase the cup for a couple of years.
Yeah. Could see that. There was this there was a controversy in Vancouver, shockingly, on Friday when Ilya Mikheyev was announced that he played the game, and then they announced that they were shutting him down for the rest of the year. Calgary, we have the Chris Tanev situation where he's played hurt. In Montreal, you had the Cole Caulfield situation where there's been some question of how his injury was handled. I just, first of all, want to congratulate all of you on Twitter that got your medical degree over the pandemic. I am so impressed that you took the time to get that medical degree and know what every
doctoring thing since 2020.
Wow, it's amazing how much you all know about being
Kevin, you didn't know there's this Twitter account. You tweet to it and they send you a medical degree.
Oh, is it it's like Dr. Nick?
That's right. Hello, everybody.
Hi, everybody. But
the Dr. Nick and Dr. Phil Institute of Online Medicine, sponsored by Donald Trump.
What the hell did I miss?
Good everything.
God. We're actually going to be talking about something very good, very appropriate for you, Dev. Torn ACLs.
So Mikheyev has played the year with an injury, and they shut him down.
Is it still kind of partially there, or is it completely torn?
It was a partial tear.
A little bitch. I have no ACL, damn it.
I don't either.
Yeah, you get back on the ice, damn it. But I I guess it's the player's choice whether they can play through this pain or not. And high elite athletes, they do this, and I guess ultimately there was a lot of criticism towards the medical community. I think that's one sort of where my joke is coming from. But it's ultimately, I guess, the player's decision whether they can play or not, right? And Ilya went on Twitter and explained his situation, that it was something that he felt he could play through, and in the end that he couldn't. We saw that last year with Sean Monahan. He couldn't at the end play through it. I guess ultimately this is sort of where I'm at. It's the player's decision. I don't know if I would encourage the same situation, but the player has.
I think it's the player's decision as much as the team's decision. These guys are a business asset for the team, and they don't want to let the player go out and hurt themselves.
Right, but the bottom line is wins and losses, right? And that's your best marketing ploy, right? The market, your best promotional tool. As much as we have Blasties and pedestals and all of these sort of jerseys, wins and losses are your best marketing tool.
But you've also got to balance that win now versus that contract over 5 years or whatever it is. Yeah.
Just before we move on, just like how I have the Devon bat signal, we hit the New York Islander bat signal, New York Islander fan bat signal.
Oh.
JT is a liar, not a leader.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Are we talking about Justin Tavares or John Tavares or Justin Timberlake? Which JT?
Yeah, or Justin Thomas. I don't know.
There you go.
I'm very confused. Yeah.
Where was I going?
Well, I think with injuries, it is a collaboration. You have to and it's with the Mikheyev injury. There was more there than just that. You had the Quinn Hughes comments about the Tanner Pearson injury that play into that. The Vancouver market's just angry right now, so they just want to find different ways to be angry at the Canucks. But it's, if the player wants to play, there is no medical reason to hold them out.
Let them play.
And you're still playing for something, because that's what really pulled the plug on both Mikheyev and Caulfield, was that they wanted to get these procedures done so that they can be ready for next season, as opposed to if they were still in the playoff hunt, still playing meaningful games, they'd still be playing.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying about balancing the play versus the long term.
Yeah. So I think it's very tough. It's why I stay out of it. I try and stay out of that type of arguments and discussions, other than to say it's a complicated issue that you don't have the information, you can't really make a proper,
their body, their choice. The NHL is the best doctors in the world to either clear them or not clear them.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm getting my ACL repaired from, is from the best doctors in the goddamn world.
Dr. Nick?
No. Dr. French. Close enough.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, you are right. It's the whole debate of Buffalo and Jack Eichel last year. I was more so siding with Jack Eichel because it's his body. It's the way that he wants to go forward. And I know that's not where we're really talking about the morality of whether or not you have a contract with the team or not. But it's you got to do what's best for your own personal growth. And if it aligns with the organization you're in with, that's just I believe it's called double jeopardy.
And I've never read an NHL contract, but I'd be curious what the language is in there around the team making those decisions versus the player.
And that was part of the whole Jack Eichel conversation last year, was that, and that fight for them to have the procedures that they want to have, even if the
team doesn't want it.
The team doesn't want that. And I've always said this, it's just like, yeah, you can do whatever you want with your body. You may have to take some of the
might have to assume some risk.
Depending on what you decide to do. And sometimes that is, if that's in not agreeing with your employer. For these guys, it's their teams. There may be repercussions there, but I think it's, for the most part, I think you're seeing more teams try and work collaboratively with their medical professionals.
Yeah.
The second and third opinions that the players are allowed to get, as well as the players and their representatives.
And I think looking at different types of medicine than they have in the past as well, and different types of procedures. And
I think the whole thing, and Devin knows this very much so with his ACL as well. In the past few years, there's a lot more research into what you can do without without those ligaments, as opposed to getting them surgically repaired.
Especially when you're a high performance podcast like Devin.
Yeah, he's a legend.
Yeah, I haven't had my ACL for the past 8 years, and it served me decently well.
And
but that kind of goes hand in hand within my my own business. But there are, like, in all honesty, there are professional soccer players who have no ACL and MCL, but they are able to continue without surgery. So each circumstance and each tear is completely different, depending on who you talk to and who you believe and who you trust.
And going back to our Royal Rumble analogies in the beginning, I mean, look at Stone Cold with his big knee braces, right? I mean, that guy had no knees, and he was able to keep doing what he did at a high level.
Yeah,
what a goddamn beauty he is.
Well, yeah, even Kevin Owen, like there's a lot of these athletes, a lot of high performance athletes. I mean, football, Patrick Mahomes with his ankle, he was able to adjust and win the game. And, it's
wasn't the ref's fault?
There was some reffing questions for sure, but Patrick Mahomes still played a pretty damn good game.
It's like every NHL game.
It's like every professional sports match game.
Well, I'd say there's a lot more reffing questions in the NHL than a lot of other sports during the regular season. But
probably that it's something we can expand on in future for sure. Did anyone
a bye-week discussion?
Yeah. Did anyone find what the Oilers did on Saturday to Chicago disrespectful when they put in the e-bug after they were up 5-6-7-2?
No.
Unbelievably disrespectful to the goddamn game.
I've heard fans upset. I've yet to hear anyone in the Chicago organization upset. Like, I don't think any of them care.
Why the fuck would the fans be upset? Good God. How about you fuck off? Honest to God, fuck off and understand the relevance of it all.
It's Seriously. A good story.
Yeah.
We all love, I mean, look at the most, the best NHL stories over the past 5 years have been the emergency goalie stories.
Right, Jeff?
Zamboni driver employed by the Toronto organization beat Toronto Maple Leafs. It's great. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, but like, honestly, that goes to show the relevance of it all. Who fucking cares? It's about, like, realistically, why are we loving this sport so much? It's about the individual accomplishments of it all. Ovechkin potentially beating Wayne Gretzky in the goal scoring. You have. I mean, I wanted to go on a list, but I can't really think of anything else right now. But you cheer for the Mark Giordano's of.
You cheer for the people.
Exactly, yeah. You cheer for the people.
The stories are huge.
Stuff. Yeah.
Like in the grand scheme of things, this will just be another little anecdote in footnote in NHL hockey history. But for that guy,
that is
that's
Yeah.
a
That's a dream come true.
lifetime memory.
Yeah.
Like that's
And the NHL's full of these silly stories, all the way from the Taro Tujimoto story in Buffalo through, this guy. Like, the NHL's just full of these quirky little stories of, players that existed or didn't exist or whatever.
yeah. Oh, Taro Tujimoto. That's such a great story.
That's who the Flames need to solve their season woes.
Not Yarmy Yager.
They can fire Darryl and hire Tujimoto behind the bench. But yeah, I think, I don't see the big deal. I mean, people say it was disrespectful. The Oilers were already up. And you know what? If this, if anything, you're saying Chicago should be able to get back in it then. I mean, they gave the kid a chance, and why not? He went out of his way to become your goalie for the night. Why not give him a chance? Why not give him that shot?
And
Yeah.
it wasn't even the fucking coach's decision. It was
No.
Connor McDavid asking the coach, Jay Woodcroft, to put him in. That's a
Yeah.
good idea. Absolutely, it is.
And it sounded like
Good on
Campbell was
Connor
behind
for
it
doing
too.
that. Yeah.
I think it would have been different if you put this kid in, the line of fire all night or something. But when you've got the game sewn up, why not?
Yeah.
I've asked, is it any less respectful than pulling your goaltender? Like,
With 3 minutes to go.
yeah. And what, like a 4-goal lead?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a great story. That's, is there anything else we need to talk about before I say the one last thing?
Nope.
Can we go down Arizona and the depth that they have in that organization?
We'll get
That'd
Mike
be great.
Gould on.
Yeah,
We'll
good.
get Mike.
Good. Yeah. How good are those jerseys? Anyways.
They have some damn good jerseys. Even their AHL jerseys I like too. Anyway, all I will say about Bobby Hull, great hockey player, shitty human being. That's, I think, all of that. He passed away today. Great hockey player, shitty human being, and I understand that people are angry, and your feelings on Bobby Hull are valid, and that's where I will leave it.
I think at some point, and I've said this about Theo Fleury too, I think at some point we have to look at what they did as a professional on the ice.
There definitely is something towards that. We don't talk about the good people Hall of Fame, because then Curtis Lazar would be a part of that. You got to look at what each individual player has done.
Michael
on the
Stone
ice.
will be part of that.
Absolutely.
It's not the, what is it, the Canadian Tire Good Deeds Cup we're going for here. It's the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I know, but at the same time, what Bobby Hull has been reported.
I think it's not necessarily that, though. It's the legacy. At this point, it's more about the legacy, which is why I think it's great. I think what Kevin said is actually exactly what I've been saying. On the ice, great legacy. Off the ice,
I look at the
not
Hollywood
good.
Walk of Fame. There's a bunch of people there that are terrible human beings, good actors.
Yep.
And I think for me, I think you need to be able to have that talk about both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you need to realize when they're not a good person, but I don't think you should maybe not celebrate their professional accomplishments because of it.
Yeah, I get where you're at. Yeah.
Okay.
What? No, go ahead, Sean. Were you going to say something?
No. I'm just like, all right, awkward silence. Let's go.
Okay, well, let's leave it here. So, Dan, what do you got? Okay, so you're going to put this podcast on your feed. So this is going on your feed. And
That's
then
right. Fireside Chat dropped tonight, our new episode. So if you want to listen to that, you can go to firesidechat.ca. You can find us anywhere that fine podcasts are found. Find us on Apple, Spotify, everywhere. Our social media is up there as well. And then next week, 1 week from today, so that would be the 5th of February, this will go into the Fireside Chat feed as well as a bit of a bonus episode. So we'll call it a crossover.
Is that because I came on?
Yes. I wasn't going to do it. And then Devin came on. I'm like, well, now it's got to be a bonus episode.
Little tongue in cheek there for people who are not looking at my face right now.
Devin, it was going to go on the OnlyFans page, but when you came on, now it's going to be free to the world.
I said, hey, listen, if it's OnlyFans, this tarp needs to come off.
I thought about creating an OnlyFans page for people to pay me not to post my feet.
Yeah. I will leave my clothes on if you pay me. Yeah. No. Anyway. Whoa, that went way over somewhere else. So how do we follow you, Dan?
You can find us firesidechat.ca. You can find us on Twitter. We are facebook.com/firesidechat, at Fireside Podcast on Twitter, Fireside Chat _podcast on Instagram, or find us anywhere that fine podcasts are found.
Okay, and Sean, how do we follow you?
I am Bearded Canucks 03 on Twitter.
You can follow me on Twitter at Gordhouse09.
And you can follow Tyler TNOBLE, Chris Schneidz SCHNEIDZ. I am KEVOLE, Shifts and Pucks, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Subscribe wherever you get your audio. Area 51 Sports Network. We will figure out our schedule again. I mean, we'll just probably this weekend we will dig into more Canucks news, or we'll dig into some other stuff. I mean, we'll get Tyler and Chris's perspective on what happened with the Bo Horvat trade. And maybe something else happens. Who knows?
There's an all-star game. That's going to happen.
Oh, great. Yeah. But no, in terms of other things that could happen, in terms of maybe another trade happens. Who knows? But we thank all of you for watching, listening. We thank you for all the comments. Sorry we didn't get to all of them. But thanks for everyone. Share, like, subscribe, tell your friends about us, and we will talk to you very soon. Bye for now.
Oilers suck.